You're listening to The Drive Home on 710 KURV. I'm Davis Rankin, along with Kennedy LaFave and Eric Watt, who is a pastor of a church in the, I guess you'd say the Northeast, but he's here in his incarnation as, I think you're the founder of Empower. Am I correct about that?
That is correct.
And Empower we found, of course, through the tool that everyone uses. I went to Google and was looking for sex trafficking. Human trafficking and Empower came up. So welcome to the drive home. We appreciate it. And as we explained before, our task today is to try to make sense of the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking. We're told that we're here in the Rio Grande Valley, the little pointy tip of Texas, is a great throughway for human trafficking. But anyway, so do a data dump on us, but make it exciting. What's the story?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's so good to be with you, and I have learned an incredible amount just in the last few weeks about what you guys have been struggling with for some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, that before I got involved in helping to put an end to all kinds of human trafficking, I was completely naive. I just presumed that when people went from one part of the world to another and crossed the border, that they were treated well, they were honored, that they were taken care of, and that's just not true. And so people are being smuggled, and they're being trafficked, they're treated horribly, they're treated less than human. It's a very complicated issue, but for those, especially minors, and right now minors in Central America, their future is not bright no matter where they go, and no question in my mind that they're being treated less honorably than they should be.
Now, explain less honorably and by whom, because our congressman mentions many a time is such a disgusting statistic that about 1 in 3 individuals who are crossing the country, although illegally, are being females are being put through some things that are just absolutely gut-wrenching. Well, who's putting them in harm's way, and how are they able? How is the bad guys able to keep them there for so long?
There's some statistics that are kind of overwhelming. Well, one is FBI stated the average age of a prostitute in the United States is somewhere between 12 and 13 years old.
Now, say that again, please.
The FBI did a study, and they concluded the average age of a prostitute in the United States is between 12 and 13 years old.
Are these orphan children?
The average.
That's insane.
That means they're younger. They're kids younger than that.
Yes, my daughter is 14. And so in our family, we're not trying to find, problems behind every bush, but we're on the alert because we live in a community like everybody else. Not all dysfunctional, broken, runaway, less privileged children are targets. This is organized crime, and it's a very serious thing that's impacting our own kids in America.
So there's
a recent report that came out of Texas that of the homeless or runaways in the state of Texas in the last year or so, within 48 hours, up to a third of those are trafficked for inhumane sexual activity. And so this is a serious issue that we have on our hands. What's happening with the Central American children coming across, no question in my mind that the same people who are perpetrating this kind of evil to some extent on our own children are doing this with children who are crossing into our borders. It's complicated, but the outlook for them is not bright.
What's define trafficked, and how is trafficking different from smuggling?
Great question. Human trafficking is the buying and selling of people. There's between 27 and 30 million people who are sold into slavery every year. It's usually divided up into sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And so if there is someone who is buying or selling a person, then that's trafficking. Typically, smuggling is perhaps a nuance different than that because a lot of times people put their own money up, and through a coyote or some other route, they are paying to be smuggled into a system. for whatever reasons they might say that they need to come into our country. Certainly, economic freedom is maybe the nicest thing that we could talk about. But so if smuggling is something that is a volunteer process, they're earning money or they're getting money from somebody else. Trafficking is by lure, by coercion, by abduction, taking somebody from one place to another.
Go back to that statistic. You said 27 to 30 million. That's 10% of our.
I'm sorry. As 27 to 30 million people are slaves worldwide
Okay.
today.
Okay.
That's
So
still
That's still an astounding number. It's
a huge number. The concern that I have, and what we're trying to say, is that this is not just something in the Rio Grande Valley. This is not just a Texas problem. This is a national problem. This is an epidemic.
Is it being addressed?
I don't think that it is being addressed the way that it could be, and we want to get involved and come alongside. I've been talking to folks at Family Church there in McAllen, and we're trying to put together a summit so that public sector leaders, private sector, churches, community leaders, we can kind of come together, and churches around the country can come and be a support to deal with trafficking and what that could have as an impact. I'll give you one statistic from San Diego. Last year, there's an article in the newspaper, in the San Diego paper, that the drug cartels that work that border have chosen to leave drugs and to go as their number one cash business, human trafficking. And that's because the value of a trafficked child is in the thousands of dollars.
But you're saying a trafficked child is a coerced child as opposed to somebody who pays a coyote, perhaps a mean coyote, but they're going voluntarily.
I'm just saying that it's a serious issue,
I understand.
And it's doubtful that every single one of those children are either one doing it voluntarily. And I think, since we know a little bit about who is doing this, that we have to also say they're being used and they're being abused and they're being taken advantage of.
I wanted to ask that about the who is doing this, because we know, as Edward Snowden showed us many a times, that the NSA knows pretty much everything about us all. Do we know who is doing this, especially here at home, and why is it? Because I would say it is seemingly being ignored. You hear many a times on the Hill from both parties. They talk about the war on women when it includes wages, or the war on women when it includes this. But I would say there's a real war on women when it comes to sex trade or other things. And I would say that you were absolutely right. It is seemingly being ignored.
I think that it's absolutely being ignored, and I'm not exactly sure why. I'm not a politician. I'm trying to bring hope and an opportunity for people to have a totally different path of life. I got into this whole battle against human trafficking because a very dear friend of mine called me from Nepal several years ago and told me that his daughter was in the fight for her life, and kidnappers were coming for her because he was taking a stand against trafficking. And so I started seeing this is not just about economics. This is about the exploitation of children for the most perverse, dark use that you could ever imagine.
Did you see the movie Taken with Liam Neeson?
Yes, I have.
All right, well, there's a scene where these two middle-class girls, they're seized by Albanian, and they're put up in a brothel, what essentially is a brothel. And I guess they're used to death. Is that what we're talking about? Is it possible to say with any kind of certitude to describe to people how the girls or the boys are being put to use?
They are being treated as animals. They are being. That movie is a nice picture based on what actually happens from both the research that I know and the people that I've talked to who have been trafficked, and what we're trying to stop is that they are put in what you would call cages. They're kept under the floor of different kinds of buildings, shops, parlors.
Where does this take place?
It takes place in all kinds of cities across America. And the truth of the matter is, wherever there's a porous border, this is a major issue. Our federal government, I have to say, is doing a better job. In lots of places, if you are a prostitute and you're a minor, then you're the one who is prosecuted. And there just aren't a lot of minors who are making decisions that that's their profession. It's a deeper problem. And that's what we're really trying to get at. How can we, as a community, essentially say, this isn't going to happen in our town anymore?
You mentioned the porous border, so you would say that situations like what we're seeing on the border now are adding to this disgusting problem.
I would say exponentially.
What? Why isn't that? I guess I don't see a connection in my mind. If there's up to 30 million individuals sold a year worldwide, yes, worldwide, but that's 30 million families, I would assume, that are affected every single year, adding to the previous years. So why, if there's that many individuals, that many families that are part of it, that means that there's that many churches, that means there's that many workers, there's that many jobs and businesses. Why is this something that continues to, I would say, grow and not stopped?
Yeah, that's a question about my pay grade.
That's a question for the pastor, but he's not here in that incarnation.
Yeah, I will say this, that I grew up in a very unusual circumstance, in kind of a father's no best family, with a loving father, a loving mother. My sister and I were treated honorably. We grew up as a family unit, little if any dysfunction whatsoever. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that it dawned on me that people who are risking their lives for economic opportunity or for any other kind of freedom, and they're going across the borders of our country, they're not being treated by the same kind of upbringing that I got. They are, you can just read the stories of where they're, how they're left alone, how they are deserted, how their money's taken from them. And you're dealing with the type of person that isn't going to treat a child honorably. And sex trafficking and child labor trafficking is the second or third largest business in the world.
Let's bring it. We don't have infinite time, although we got lost listening to you, I have to confess. Let's bring it back to the southern border and this latest spasm of people from Central America. We have participated in, I think, probably mischaracterizing them as smaller children, because that's what we've seen. We've seen the 20% smaller children, not the family units. There's a report out that most of the kids coming are, in fact, teenagers. But bring it. What do you know, or what would you advise people as a way of looking at this? Because they're put up as being, or they're described as just coming north to get away from violence and for a better life. What do you offer us?
Well, I think we have, the range of emotions. Certainly they're coming for a better life, but they're also coming through a system that doesn't treat them honorably, and they're coming into our country, and that's a very disruptive situation that causes problems for everybody and presses our system. And I'm not a politician, but it's obvious the chaos and the havoc that it wreaks at every single level. I think at the individual teenager or individual family of somebody who's coming from a place without hope, they are willing to do anything to survive. And I think that we have an epidemic that's, unless something happens drastically, that's going to impact not just the Rio Grande Valley, but it's going to impact our entire nation. And I think it's bigger than our government can handle.
Eric, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just think it's so big, all of us need to lean in and do what we can and not politicize it, but recognize this is a complex issue. Let's, lock arms and let's see what we can do to restore order and hope for people. And the political answers, let those people take care of it. But in the meanwhile, we have our own children to protect. We have these other people who are coming across our borders. some bring good, some bring bad, and there's a whole lot of evil that's going on in the midst of it.
Eric Watt is with Empower. How can people find out more information or perhaps get involved with you in this struggle?
Yeah, there's two things. You could go to our website, endhumantrafficking.com, and just shoot a message to us, and we'll be glad to connect. From our vantage point, we're working with people there. We want to pull together a summit in early September and bring experts from across the country to deal with trafficking issues and bring it to the forefront, and then offer it in essence as a gift to your community so that we can come in and be a support. So we want to bring in medical experts, sociologists, social workers, people from different walks of life so that we can get behind what's happening in your community and we can work together. That's what America does. We work together.
Eric Watt, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to 710 KURV.